Hello and welcome to Blender Basics. Today we're doing materials and texturing. Hi, my name is xsinick and I have a stream on Twitch called the xsinick Show. The stream, rather, is about everyone that joins in and about community and about us learning together. So with that said, let's jump right into materials and texturing in Blender. So this is the result that we're looking for, and this is being rendered using cycles in the viewport. And let's get right to it. And here is the teacup that we created in the last tutorial. Now, if you don't have this teacup, look at the last set of tutorials and you'll see how we go about making it. I'm going to press tab to get into edit mode now. How we joined the teacup handle to the actual teacup itself, and I did that through polygon modeling, and I also retopologized the handle itself so it has nice edge flows and nice polygon flows so that we could do the main step of texturing and making materials in Blender, which is UV mapping. But you need proper edge flows, and when I say edge flows, I'm talking about these strips of edges. When I'm talking about polygon flow, I'm talking about these strips of polygons like this and like that. And there has to be a natural flow to it. So the next thing you do after you make sure that there's proper edge flows and proper polygon flows in your model is to apply your scales and transforms. And what that is pressing Ctrl A, and right here it has apply. I'm going to select rotation and scale. And what that does is to make sure that any kind of scaling or moving or rotation or whatever it is that your model has, is going to make it all 0, 0, which means it's going to be the exact size that you see here, and it's not going to be in the process of being scaled. Go up to the UV editing tab to the top of the window here. I'm just going to zoom in and show you guys what that is. I got a new zoom tool. Check it out right here, UV editing. I'm going to click on that. I will show you with a regular cube. I'm going to press tab to look at the UVs, and look, each side of the cube is laid out almost as a cross, right? And it's laid out flat. Like if you flatten a box in real life, you could flatten it looking like this. And what this allows you to do is to take this image and go into a paint program like Photoshop, like MS Paint, or the Gimp, or any paint program you like. And that's the reason why you want to do UV layout. So this is a UV layout window. In the UV window, this icon right here, you can see it. I'll get there. This icon right there to the top of my head. Press that icon, and what it does is syncs the selection. So anything you select in here is going to be selected over here. Anything you select in here in the window, in the 3D window, is going to be selected here. Then it actually shows you which face is which face. So I select this face, that's the middle part here. If I select that, if I select this face here, and I select that face, that's the top. So if I select this face here, that face, that's these two faces being selected. Then this face here is another face over here. And it's good to know like where the faces kind of are for simple objects so that you know what to paint. So say if like I wanted to paint an image of a smiley face on top of the box. I need to know what square here is the top. And right here, this square here is the top. So now I could put a smiley face here and it will appear on the box. But first, before we paint in the UV space right here, we need to lay out the UVs first. So let's do that with the cup. The cup, I'm deleting my box. I select the cup. The cup is a lot more complex. There's a lot of faces, right? And we don't have time to select each face and figure out which each face is, because that's gonna drive you insane. So let's so I'm gonna press U key here in the viewport. It brings up a menu, and the menu is the UV mapping menu, and here it has unwrap. So without doing anything, we could just select, make sure we have all the faces selected in our model, and then click UV unwrap, and then we go here to something called Smart UV, And Smart UV is going to try to lay this out in the best way possible. So I'm going to click that. Then it brings up another menu, and this is the settings that you want. Under angle limit, I put it there 66 degrees, that's fine. Margin method scaled, that's fine. Rotation method, axis aligned vertically, that's fine. Now under island margins, put like 0.01 just for now, so we could see what that look like. And area weight, turn that all the way up to 1. Now click unwrap, and it's gonna break the teacup up into these pieces, and you could almost see the shape of the teacup. Let's select everything again. You can almost see the shape of the teacup with the way it wants to lay out the UVs right here, right? Now, if you don't like the way that this looks, like I don't like the way that this looks right now because it looks like broken pottery. When we paint on things, we don't have to break up our image in different pieces to get it on the cup, and it's going to be like a big jigsaw puzzle, and it's going to be confusing. So let's keep this simple. So what you could do is to press U and get back into your unwrap, your UV mapping menu, go unwrap, go back to Smart UV project, right? And what you want to do in here is to change your island margins, right? This will make it a little smaller, go 0.01, let's go 3, and press unwrap and see what we get. Okay, so it's filling up a little bit more. This is good. Still confusing, right? So one of the ways that we want to get this to unwrap perfectly is to apply seams. We need to tell Blender where to cut the cup so it makes sense to us. So to tell Blender how to cut this in a proper way rather than this weird way is to use something called UV seams. So I'm going to make this window here bigger, and we're going to focus on making some UV seams on this to tell Blender to cut it in a nicer way. So we're going to go into edge mode. Now to get this UV menu, you could also go up here into UV, and the menu is right here. So instead of pressing U on the keyboard, when you're in object edit mode, you could go here under UV and you could get all the options under unwrap, and it'll be all right here. So we're going to make some UV seams to tell Blender where to cut this. So the first UV seam I'm going to make would be right down the middle. So I'm going to go into edge mode, and to select a row of edges, I'm going to hold Shift, then Alt. On my keyboard, it could be a slightly different than yours. I've changed my shortcuts. It could be Shift Control or something like that, but I'm pressing Shift Alt for me, and I'm going to select this row, like splitting it in half, right? I'm going to go over here to the bottom. I'm going to look at the other part here that I want selected. I believe this row of, I'm going to split it like this also. Okay, so this is going to be our first set of UV seams. So I selected this loop of edges. Then I'm going to right click in my viewport. Because we're in edge mode, we get the edge menu. So I'm going to go down until I see mark seam right here. So that's to make UV seam. So I'm going to click it, and when you click it, it's going to change the color and put a red outline around the selection. And when we click off, you're going to see this red seam. So this is telling Blender where to cut our UVs. I'm going to make a circular one on the bottom right here. Right, so it's going to cut this out like a circle. So I'm going to right click, mark seam. Making UV seams are fun because it tells Blender where to cut it. So the seams that I don't want, if you have some seams like I selected these and I don't want them in Blender to cut through here. So I'm going to select these edges. I'm going to right click and go clear seam and then deselect them. So it's going to cut, so Blender's going to cut this circle out and then cut this cup in half. Let's do the inside again. I believe I want this right here. I'm going to go mark seam, right click, mark seam. And I'm selecting this edge, that edge, and then that edge. For me, for you, it could be slightly different, but what you want is nice clean cuts. Then I'm going to go clear seam, and it's going to clear the seams that I have selected. So I have a nice circle cut here. and then it's going to cut straight along here. So far so good. So what I want to do is to cut this handle in a special way. So I'm going to select the inside edge loops of this handle by holding Control Alt again, and then clicking on an edge, one edge, and it's gonna make a selection around in a loop. And this is why having proper edge flow and polygon flow in your model is important for when you're doing UV mapping. You don't always need it for certain objects. Still, if you're an artist and you want things to be cut a certain way so that you can paint on them easy, this is the way that you do it. And if you don't want to buy special plugins and you just want to use straight raw Blender, which is what we do here in Blender Basics, you can just do the method I'm using right now. So I have this edge loop, select this, I'm going to right click and go mark seam, and it made it so it's telling Blender cut along this red edge right here. So now I just want a few more around the handle. Let's see, maybe around here, or maybe a little wider than that. Oh, maybe here's fine. And I want this right here also. And you could hold you could add edges by just holding Shift Alt and clicking some more loops like I just did. So I'm gonna right click and let's go ahead and mark seam on this. So I like this so far. This is good. I want to make a few more. So I'm gonna go to the top here. I'm gonna click on this. Let's actually go on the inside. Oh, let's stay on the top. This is fine. I'm gonna have Blender cut this part of the cup. Let's go edge, mark seam, and let's do the bottom also. Go mark seam. Okay, so I'm looking at it. So Blender's gonna cut out like different shapes like this. So see right here we have like a ton of different UV, what they call UV islands, which are these specific pieces. It's cutting it into many different pieces, right? And each piece is made of different squares. This is too much, right? But with this method, we're telling it just use very few pieces to make this up, right? So look at that. So we selected this piece and it's just like a weird shaped piece. Okay, so I'm going to press A to select everything. And now I'm going to go press U, or you could go up in UV right here and go unwrap. I'm going to press U, the U key. Okay, so these are the different unwrap options right here. So it have angle based, it have conformal, it have minimal stretch. Let's try minimal stretch and see what we get. Okay, so minimal stretch unwrapped it, and it gave us this result. So you could see where we have very few pieces now. And if you want to see what each piece is, all you have to do is you could select, let's go into face mode. You could select a face and then press L and it will select an element and it will show you. So that's this whole chunk right here. The insides are not that important for this model. So I'm going to select these insides. I'm going to press L for this one, L for that one. And we're going to just scale them down, and we're just going to move them out to the side. So this is where we do UV work. Now, if all of this is confusing, please stop the video, rewind, look at the different steps I've done, take your time with your model, and build up to this point. Right? So what I do, especially when you're doing game modeling, you want to look for the parts that people see the most. Like the inside, people don't really see that. It's not that important because people don't look at the inside of a cup in a game, or even if you're doing an animation, not that much. So it's not as important. The most important part is the outside of the cup that you see the most. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select all the outside pieces. I'm going to select this piece here. That's an outside piece. I'm going to press L, select that piece. And then the handle is the most important piece, right? Or pieces. I'm going to select this piece here and then that piece. So these are the most important pieces. I'm going to press G on my keyboard to move these UV islands and move them over here. Remember, my keyboard shortcuts I'm pressing in here is I'm pressing the L key in here in the UV editor to select these different islands. So I'm pressing L to select this one, L to select that one, this one, and this one. So these, and if we look here, we can see which one, what parts of the cup we're selecting. I just selected all the bottom parts here and all the inside circle parts, which are not that important. So I'm going to move them over here. So now, if you do not have a plugin, you could have this selected like this, or if you do have a plugin, come in here, let's go UV, and let's look and see what options. So Blender has pack islands. So let's click on pack islands. Let's see what it is. It's asking you how you want to go about packing the islands. Let's just leave everything as default. I'm going to press pack. Right, so it packed all the selected islands we have and try to fill up this square. So this square in the UV window represents the texture that you're going to make. Now, most textures for 3D applications are in some sort of square aspect ratio. Another thing that I do is to go right here to the pivot selection here, right? And I want to pivot on the 2D cursor. Another thing, I changed this from incremental to vertex, this snapping. And that's the changes that I make to the UV editor. So I'm selecting this, and if I shift right click, I get the cursor to go where I want it to go, and I rotate. This is very important if you want to lay out UVs by hand, and right now I'm laying it out by hand. I'm going to press G to grab. I'm going to bring it over here. Okay, so this is the inside of the cup, so I may want it to rotate the other way. I'm going to put my 3D cursor right where I want it to rotate. I'm rotating it right here. And if you hold Control, you can get it to snap to different degrees. You know, as long as it looks straight enough, it's fine. I'm going to rotate this way and put that there. So these two are taking up that space. Let's select this again here, L. I'm going to go. I normally like to group these things together, but let's just put it wherever we could get it to work. This is the bottom part here, which is not very important at all. At least for what we're trying to do here. You know, it may all be important for what you're trying to do. If you're doing like a close-up of a teacup exploding or something like that in, you know, in some kind of special effect, you know, you'd probably want everything to be laid out equally. Okay, so I'm going to select these two tiny circles, and I'm just going to put them somewhere where there's some kind of space, which is probably like right over here. I'm going to select. I'm going to draw a selection. I'm holding Control to draw a selection around this little guy here. I'm just going to grab him, put him there. Okay, so this is laid out. This is a nice UV layout. I'm thinking that this part of the cup here is a little too close to that, so I'm going to select L, G, and I'm just gonna grab it and just move it along. Whoops. Grab X and move it along there just to kind of equal it out a bit. Right, so it's a little closer to there. Blender tries its best, but it's not perfect. Okay, so I'm looking at the handle, which is very important. Right, so the handle is over here like this. I wish this handle was flipped. L. And the handle could be symmetrical, meaning that it could occupy the same UV space, but I'm just moving it around to where I feel comfortable. Actually, let's just leave it like this. This is fine. Right, so we could use, because it's laid out like this now, we could use this to paint over, you know, the cup itself, right? So we'll know how it's laid out. The way it's laid out, the cup is kind of facing this way. I'm going to rotate this entire UV layout, and just for now I'm going to go back to bounding, select it all. I'm going to press R for rotate and press 90. How about minus 90? Right, so it's no right side up. This is fine, so I'm going to press save, and right off the top we could go into the Gimp and add textures onto this. Right, so let's go ahead and add an image to this so we could start painting on this. So I'm going to click on image, new, And right here we have 1024 by 1024, which is fine. I'm going to type teacup. And we don't want any alpha channels. Right, so here's the image. I'm just gonna get rid of this extra menu. Okay, so here we have a black image on here. So I'm gonna go image again. I'm gonna save it. Save the image itself. We could save two things. We could save the image and then we could save the UV layout. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna make a little folder here called textures. Oops. Put that in there. This is our teacup. And we could just stick with regular JPEG. PNGs are really nice, but you know, we could keep things as small and as simple as possible. I'm gonna save as a. Okay, I'm just gonna correct that. Okay, so here we are with our image. And right here in Blender, we could go over to the texture painting tab. And here we could click up here in the image browser and we could select our teacup texture. But the teacup texture, we actually want it to be diffuse. So that's the main texture that you normally start painting in 3D, is the diffuse. And what a diffuse is, it's just the flat color of what the object is. Whatever color the object is, whatever different textures, it's all flat and just color. So that's the diffuse. That's the first one that you want to start painting. So I'm just gonna change my name to teacup underscore diffuse. I'm just gonna save it. I'm gonna save this again. Image, save as. I'm gonna put underscore diffuse. All right, that's the first one. Save as. Okay, so here we are. So as is, you would see that you have this here and then this here, and it looks pink, right? And you're going to say, like, why am I not seeing a texture? So you have to do a few things. One of the first things is that you got to make sure you're in material preview mode up here. So right now I'm in viewport shading, and I'm going to change it to some regular solid shading to the top right of your viewport. Over to material shading, which shows the material. Right, so right now it's white, there's no material, and I'm going to I'm going to add this image into the diffuse slot of the material. And one way you want to do that is to then go into the shading tab, and you'll see this whole layout, this material shader editor, right, which is a node editor, material node shader editor for the teacup, right? And what you want to do, you want to add that image into the base color, the diffuse slot, right? Also known as the diffuse slot. So let's go in here and we're going to click Shift A, input, and then what you're looking for is not input, sorry. You want to go down to texture, and under texture you want to look for image texture here in the material node editor, and you want to hook up your color to the base color over here, and you want to change your image to the teacup diffuse image, teacup underscore diff, right? And you could also click your viewport shading material preview here, and you'll see that it gets the black color of that texture map that we made. So let's go back to texture painting, and you'll see like the black color right here. Another thing in Blender that's important to know is how to add elements to your UI. And instead of going back and forth in these panels, you could actually add different UI elements. So what I'm going to do, hold the corner of this part of the viewport and drag it up, and what it does is makes a extra window, and in this window, this little button to the top left of this extra window right here, right, allows you to change what that window is. So right now it's in text, it's in the viewport, 3D viewport, and I want to change this to the shader editor, and it's actually going to bring that shader editor that we saw over in the shading tab. It's going to bring it right here. So we have everything right here, right? So now in this window, if you click your N tab here, it brings up this menu, and in this menu you could change the colors that you want to paint with. So right now my color that I'm painting with right here, according to this, is black. I'm going to change it to white, and if I paint on this image right here, just like we would in Photoshop or the Gimp, you see it makes a white strip, and I know that this is the top of the cup because of the shape of it. So if I paint along here, this top of the cup is going to get that. Another popular thing to do is not just to paint on a flat thing like that, is to actually paint in the 3D viewport. So you could do that here. So I'm going to make my brush size a little smaller, and I'm just going to paint right here like this. So wherever I look at, it's going to paint that right there. See? And we could finally make, let's undo all of that. So right here we could finally make our smiley face. There you go, guys. Painting in Blender. So right now I have mirror turned on, so that's why when I painted on this side, it went over on that side. I don't want that, so I'm going to turn mirror off because I just want unique things on the cup. So now, so if you know, like when you paint on one side, it happens on the other side, it's because if you go to the top here of your viewport, there is this option to do symmetry painting, which you may need if you want to do that. But for now, we just want everything unique. So I could just paint this one thing here, and it's just going to go where it needs to go. There you go. Okay guys, so this is where, you know, having a Wacom tablet would be really good when you want to do hand painting, right? A lot of people, they use different programs like Substance Painter to do hand painting, and even 3D Coat. You could literally do it here in Blender. You just have to know how to arrange things. So this is the part of the tutorial that gets kind of deep, and I'm hoping that you're still following me, and if you're following me up to this point, you're doing really well. Another way to add texture besides hand painting on objects is to use an image, and we're going to do that. So remember, we exported this square black image as a JPEG. What I want to do now, let's see here. So what I want to do now is to export the UV layout as an image also. So I'm going up in UVs here. I went back to the UV editing tab. I went into image. Sorry, I went into UV, and the last option here is UV export UV layout. So we're going to click on that, and next to the teacup, I'm going to put teacup, and I'm going to give it a name called UV underscore UV. So we know that this is the UV for that, and I'm going to leave it as a PNG for now. I'm going to export layout. So what it did, it took a snapshot of what this looks like and exported it. So now you could go into a program like the Gimp, Critter, or any 2D paint program you have, and you can combine the two images. And I'll show you how to do that. You go File, Open, and you open wherever you left your teacup images. Wherever you save them, that's where you got to go get it. Okay, this is my UV, teacup UV. So this is the UVs. So what happened is, because I had one of the UV selected, it only exported one. Let's deselect it so it exports everything. Image, just go back to UVs, export. And that's so cool that Blender, if you have a UV selected, it would only export that particular one. So I'm going to click on all UVs right here and export that. So let's go back into the Gimp or 2D painting program. You might have Photoshop. Select that UV thing, and now a picture of all the UVs is imported. I'm just gonna hide that ruler. I'm gonna press open. I'm gonna open my diffuse texture diff. Open that, and see it's right there. It's black. That's what we wanted. So I'm gonna take my UVs right here. I'm gonna drop them into this image, like so. So now we have kind of like a template of what, of what it should look like. So I don't want to paint on this one. I just want to paint on the bottom layer. I'm just going to leave my UV layer. It's more of a guide to know where to paint stuff. So now the next thing that we're going to do is to bring in a texture. And if you look at the last teacup video, I showed you guys that I downloaded some textures, some wallpaper textures to use for the cup. So let's go ahead and get those. So I'm going to go ahead, go into my reference folder and have all these floral patterns for the cup. Let's pick a floral pattern that we could use for this teacup. Okay, I'm going to select 1, 2, 3. Okay, I really like the way this one looks. This is really nice, but let's check the other ones out. This looks very practical. I like it. It looked like something that would actually work on the teacup. And let's see the other one before we make our final decision. I like this one. So what I'm going to do, for me and for what we're doing here, I'm just going to select one of the rose patterns, and we're going to use that for the cup itself. So I'm going to make everything else blank. I'm just going to use one rose pattern. So I'm going to select out that rose pattern that I want, which is, I think I'll go with this one. So I use the lasso tool in the Gimp. Now, if you don't know how to do this, just let me know in the comments, and I may do a Gimp tutorial on how to make textures for your models. Anyways, guys, yeah, I'm just gonna put a streak of color on there. Okay, so it's being mirrored. This is good. So we could, what we could do, we could paint in the viewport and get like the thing that we need. But for me to do this, I'm going to have to let's go by hand here. Okay, we got our brush. Okay, there's stroke, space, line, and curve. Let's pick curve. Alright, so I'm going to right click and make kind of like a curve like what we did in the Gimp along here. I'm going to come up so like so. Something like that. Maybe give it a fancy curl. Let's add a fancy curl in here. In order for me to go back, what I did was to select the point I wanted to go back to. Okay, and now we could just adjust it. Clicking. Just adjust these things. And we do have symmetry on this time because I want it to be reflected on the other side. So you don't want to actually move your 3D viewport. You just want to put it where you could see things to make sense. So that is definitely view based. So we want to leave this like this. I'm going to press enter. And what it did, it just made that mark. Let's Control Z that. All right, let's see here. Make the size a little smaller. I'm pressing F to make the size smaller, and then I'm pressing enter, and it just made that line. So this line is good. This line could just be a nice start. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna go back into our 3D program, and we're gonna our 2D program, excuse me, and we're going to continue to work on it. Or if you want, you can stick here in Blender and work on it if you like. So let's change our brush from, let's go back in here. So the reason where we get this curve was to go up here into stroke under the brush options to the top, and I clicked on curve, and that's where we got the curve, and it made the curve right here, paint curve. I'm going to get rid of the curve by pressing that X here and go back to, I believe it was what we painted with dots, I think. Oh no, sorry, space. Oh, we could even make a mask. That's another cool thing. So maybe let's make a mask. So we could reveal this as being gold, like truly gold. So I'm just gonna make these things here white for just for a moment. I'm gonna go ahead, color, saturation. Actually, we want color. Let's think about, let's go hue saturation for a minute. Let's turn the saturation all the way down. Turn the lightness up. I'm gonna drop the levels on that one more time into white. Okay, so all the white parts here are going to be gold, and the black parts are going to be just a teacup color. I'm just going to go ahead and use this as a mask. Go ahead and the teacup, and I'll call this mask. And guys, we could get more complex with the designs, right? So if you really know Photoshop really well, or any other paint program, you could really get into like really making up your textures to look really, really interesting. Let's go ahead and save that. I'm gonna merge this down here. Oh, let's go back. If you want to go back, I'm going to duplicate these things. Let's turn these off. Yep, I'm gonna make this into the mask. My bad, guys. I'm just doing this over one more time here, and saturation down, lightness up, do levels, to white, push that down, and call this mask, call this base, call this gold. I'm just renaming my layers here and call this UVs. Okay, let's save this. Okay guys, so once we activate the clone tool and load the texture that we want to overlay on our texture here, using the clone tool, you can put an image in the image section of the advanced section right here. So under advanced, to the right menu, the T menu, when you press T on your keyboard in the UV paint window, or just the paint window, you get these options over here, advanced, and under advanced is an image, right? And it shows the image alpha, like how strong the image is overlaid on here. You could turn it down and you see your original image, but if you turn it up, you'll see it being overlaid here, and over here you can move it around like this with the right click. So once the image is positioned in the way that you like it, I like this position right here. You could even come in the viewport here and start painting, or you could come in here and you could just paint this right here to get some of that. Like, I like these nice roses that's happening right here, so I'm gonna paint them on here. I'm gonna paint over this because I like these roses to come down from here also. Okay, so we're gonna go back, we're gonna go into this mode here. We're gonna use Shift X to sample. I'm just gonna drop some paint down. I'm gonna make sure that I have the right brush. Make sure I have another custom fall off. I want a nice smooth fall off. There we go. We don't want anything too fancy. I'm gonna make this a smaller thing. Shift X to sample. I'm just gonna kind of put that over to the edge here a bit. Alright guys, so that's it. We got our texture painted. I'm gonna go image and save, right? So we went between doing a little bit of hand painting for these yellow parts here, which we're gonna turn into gold, and also bringing the UV map template into the Gimp or Photoshop, if you will, and working on, and I'm actually doing like a version of the textures in there, then coming back again into Blender and refining it even more. So now we're going to move on from texture painting. We're going to move on into actual materials and shading. So I'm going to go back over into the shading menu here, and we just have a simple diffuse. Okay, so I want to be able to make this strip into a gold material, and all I'm going to do is to actually make another principal BSDF right here in the node editor, and I'm going to make that gold. So I'm going to select this and then Shift D, right? I'm gonna plug this into the surface so I could see it here. I'm gonna change the color to like a little bit of a yellow, a little bit dark, a little bit of a brightish orangish yellow. And the roughness I'm gonna tune down, and the metalness I'm gonna tune all the way up, but I don't want it so far up. I want it like maybe 0.9. But let's mix these two materials. So we're gonna go in here and look for a mix shader. Let's type that, mix, M-I-X, shader. Now if working with these shaders are confusing, we will have more tutorials in the future here on Blender Basics to show you how to work with these shader networks and that kind of thing. So what this is we're going to use that mask we made earlier, and we're going to plug it into the factor so that it controls how which thing is being revealed. So I'm going to go texture, image texture, and let's go open and go into textures, and we have this teacup mask. What you actually want is to put this one on the bottom and then the other one on top. And now the gold is only restricted to this area here and that area over there. You want to change, if you have a black and white image, you want to change this from sRGB to non-color. That's always good practice. So that's it. God is good, and we just finished this, and it was really nice having you guys here to see the final results of using curve modeling to create this teacup, and then using UVs and using materials and shading to get to this point. And this is a cup of tea to you, my viewer, who has been following me and watching me. I'll see you guys in a little bit. God bless. Take it easy, and we'll dive deeper into more materials and different kinds of materials we can make with different techniques. Okay, I'll see you guys in a little bit. God bless, and thanks for thanks for sticking around and checking me out. I hope this was very helpful to all those who are trying to get into Blender. Bye bye.